Coming up on April 1st, we'll be at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. An unbelievably stacked card. Legends from boxing, legends from MMA, up-and-coming stars from boxing, all together as Jorge Masvidal presents Gamebred Boxing 4. Again, this is Saturday, April 1st. Now, multiple ways to watch this show. It's available through traditional pay-per-view that's in demand. You can also digitize your pay-per-view, so you can order directly online. That is ppv.com. And also historic, also through UFC Fight Pass pay-per-view is a digital pay-per-view buy as well. So through linear, through cable, through satellite, through digital as well. Gamebred Boxing 4 in Milwaukee Fiserv Arena, Saturday night, April 1st, all presented by Jorge Masvidal. Joining us on this press conference, the man himself, Jorge Masvidal, his partner, our president of Gamebred Boxing, Dean Toole, and our two main event fighters, two absolute legends, truly one of the greatest boxers in the history of the sport, Roy Jones Jr., and one of the greatest 155-pounders in the history of MMA, Anthony Pettis. We'll have introductions from our fighters, and then we will take questions from assembled media. Raise your hand. You'll see that icon on Zoom. You know how to do that, assembled media. And Andrew Roberts from Swanson Communications will go to our questions. First, I want to bring on Jorge Masvidal. He is a true A-list, A-plus list superstar in the UFC throughout the world of mixed martial arts. He is the CEO of Gamebred Boxing. Everyone, here is Jorge Masvidal.
What's up? How's everyone doing? God bless everyone watching this. And let me just say, I'm so pumped, man. I can't believe it. I'm looking at Roy. I'm looking at Pettis. It's like it's coming to life right now. I'm looking at Dean, too. I'm remembering we were having this conversation about 3 months ago if this could happen. And, obviously I've known Roy, my not known in person, but I've known of him, watching him since I'm a kid. And being a Florida guy, it's even more like, man, that dude's from Florida, so we go hard for Roy. And when Dean was telling me, he's like, man, maybe I can get Roy Jones to fight for us. I was like, man, that's Roy Jones, man. How are you gonna get Roy Jones? And thank God we were able to put this together. Pettis is one of the greatest 155ers I've ever seen, and their styles, they're both effective but crazy flashy, crazy swag. I'm like a fanboy, and I'm trying to be a promoter. But I'm just like, I can't believe this fight's about to take place. I just want to give a firm applause to Dean Toole for making this happen. Applause for Pettis for stepping up, fighting, I think, one of the most talented, gifted, greatest boxers ever. And Mr. Roy Jones Jr. for being part of the promotion, man. I just want to thank these guys, because if it wasn't for them, this wouldn't be happening. I'm looking at these guys right now. I'm like a fanboy right now, man. I should be a little bit more professional, but it's hard right now, man. I'm looking forward to this fight like nothing else. I've heard for a while now that Pettis wanted to transition mainly into just striking the boxing, and he's been putting all his time and effort in there. So I'm eager to see how my brothers in MMA do against one of the most decorated boxers that ever lived. So let's go, man.
Dean Toole is Jorge Masvidal's partner. He is a true visionary in combat sports, as a promoter, as a matchmaker. He is a completely innovative and outside-the-box thinker, coming together with the great Jorge Masvidal to present Gamebred Boxing 4. Again, that's April 1st in Milwaukee Fiserv Arena. Dean Toole serves as the president of Gamebred Boxing. Dean, let's talk about how this show came together, you and Jorge.
Yeah, well, like Jorge said, it took about 3 or 4 months. Times where we thought we weren't going to do it, where we were going to do it. A couple of key things. We do want to say thank you to Mark Bacardi with In Demand, Steve Teshi with UFC Fight Pass. This is the second ever event outside of Mayweather McGregor that has been promoted on a digital pay-per-view through UFC Fight Pass. So we definitely want to say thank you to those guys. So it took some work. The fight card is absolutely stacked. We have 3 former UFC champions on this card. We have 1 former 4-time, 8-time world champion in 4 different weight classes in Roy Jones Jr. We have a Strikeforce middleweight champion in Jacare. We have 2 UFC vets, Pearl Gonzalez and Gina Mazzani. So the whole card is absolutely stacked. So enough about me. Let's get to the people everybody wants to talk to, Pettis and Roy Jones.
Well, the main event is indeed, Dean, as all of you assembled media know, absolutely historic. This is incredible. This is really a dreamlike matchup. Anthony Pettis versus Roy Jones Jr. in the boxing ring. two of the greatest of all time in their respective sports coming together. We'll start with Anthony Pettis, of course. As we've said before, Jorge Masvidal reiterated, I will say it again, one of the greatest 155-pound fighters in the history of MMA, a world champion at 155, first in the WEC, then in the UFC. Everyone, here is Anthony Pettis.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Man, it's crazy to even be in this position. Roy Jones Jr., bro, my first boxing fight, to get a guy like that, it's a dream come true, honestly. A challenge that I've been waiting for. I was going to transition to boxing. I didn't know how many more seasons of MMA I had left, and this opportunity came about, and you can't say no to an opportunity like this because, Roy Jones Jr., a GOAT, one of the greatest of all time. I grew up watching him, and I get to square across, go face him across the ring, man. So it's like one of them challenges that wakes me up every morning, keeps me motivated, and I know he's coming to bring it. We just played poker together, and he got that poker face, and I know they're asking like, are you gonna try knocking Pettis out? He kept it real cool and non-chill, but I know he's coming.
Roy Jones Jr. is truly one of the greatest boxers in the history of the sport. He's also an entrepreneur, a highly accomplished rapper, a highly accomplished commentator. So many great years with HBO boxing. He's won world titles from middleweight through heavyweight. In fact, 20 years ago, he defeated John Ruiz to become the first middleweight in modern boxing history to win a world title. He will face Anthony Pettis in our main event at Milwaukee's Fiserv Forum on April 1st. Everyone, the other half of our main event here is Roy Jones Jr.
Hey, thank you, guys. Thank you for everybody for having me. Man, for me, it's like I always when I was still, at what I thought was pretty good. I wanted to fight Anderson Silva, but it just kept getting pushed to the side. It never happened. So I was kind of dead on all of it, and I was kind of through with boxing. I was like, I'm done. I shouldn't fight no more. I'm good. I'm 54 years old. That's enough. Then they say, one of the greatest ever at 155 said he come up and wait to fight you, and you don't have to come no lower than 200. So it started sounding kind of intriguing. I'm like, wow, he's very innovative in what he does too, because he's done things in the MMA ring that nobody else will going to ever do. And for me to get the opportunity to face somebody who has that same type of creative mind in their own sport, respective sport, as I have in boxing, it's like, wait a minute, should you say no to this? And I'm like, I want to say no, but it's Dean, it's Gamebred, it's like, it's Milwaukee. Have you ever fought in Milwaukee before? No. So it's like, the pros, I guess, outweigh the no's. So here we are.
Assembled media, we're going to get to your questions momentarily, but I'm going to ask a question to Roy. I'm going to ask a question to Anthony. Roy, as you look at Anthony Pettis as a striker, you know as well as I do that boxing and MMA striking are fundamentally very different. Are you starting to think about this in sparring, starting to think about the different angles in which Anthony might be throwing punches, might be coming forward?
Yeah, you have to, because he's different, and he's very creative with his style, even in MMA. So he knows what he's doing. He's not a fool. He's a good striker, sparring with good fighters. I mean, Caleb Plant is former world champion. I mean, he's getting the right kind of sparring in, so he's doing the right thing to prepare for a boxing match. He himself is really getting himself together for a boxing match. He's not playing about it. He's serious about it. And to me, to be honest, to see how Jake Paul was able to make the transition and do all this he did in boxing and make that much money, it inspires other people to do the same thing. So he knows that if he can get lucky and get a chance or get a win, he's going to be on the bigger and better things. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, he putting his all into that. And it's not about getting lucky. He's trying to, do what he got to do. So it's like, I have to know that as a OG, and I'm older, but I'm still a little wise when it comes to boxing. But what better way for him to learn boxing than being with somebody who knows boxing better than pretty much anybody? And it's a great learning experience for him either way. So,
Anthony, we've seen a lot of MMA superstars, A-listers, former world champions such as yourself come into boxing. There have been very mixed results. We've seen a lot of success, and we've seen some not so successful performances from high-level MMA fighters. Anthony, will you talk about your training, your preparation, how this boxing camp has been different from all of your MMA camps?
Oh yeah, it's just straight boxing now, man. So, and like Jorge Jones said, I'm finding the best boxers I can spar with. And I'm living in Vegas. I got access to great sparring partners here, man. Sparring going on right now in front of me. So I'm living this lifestyle, man. Like I went and got motivated to box. I mean, how can you not fighting one of the GOATs? Jorge Jones, y'all must have forgot it. That's one of them things that I've known as a kid, man. So yeah, I'm taking it serious. I come to win fights, and this is a whole different world that I've never been in, at this level. So the sparring I'm getting is preparing me for it, and I'm ready.
Andrew Roberts is with us. He handles our media through Swanson. He will now lead our media questions. Again, you see, if you're not familiar with Zoom, you see that raise your hand icon. Assembled Media, hit that. That will alert Andrew for questions to begin. And with that, I will give it to Andrew.
Thanks, Sean. Appreciate it. We're going to start off with David Van Auken for Fight Bananas. David, please unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
All right. You hear me, see me well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. First question is going to be for Anthony Pettis. Multiple people just mentioned about you being one of the greatest 155-pound MMA fighters of all time. This fight is now 155. This is, a lot heavier in weight. How has this been bulk up season for you? And where do you, how do you think you're going to do with a bigger frame against Roy Jones Jr.?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I've been working on to adjust to that style. I think my after the last season of PFL, I knew I wasn't going back down to 155. So I started bulking up, getting ready to go either to 170. And I'm not sure exactly what was of opportunities out there in the mixed martial arts world. So when this fight came about, I was already 205 pounds in shape, ready to go, like ready for whatever, pretty much. And Dean Toole, one of being my boys, he told me this is what's out there. This is the opportunity. In my hometown, it was just something that I could not say no to, man. And like Roy said, like getting that experience in there was one of the greats. You can't get that, anywhere, unless you're actually doing it, So like for me, being there in my hometown and fight Roy Jones Jr., sparring bigger guys right now, I feel like I'm getting the pressure that he's going to bring. But that's why it's a fight game. It's where I'm gonna go in there and I'm gonna use my smarts. I'm gonna use my skills that I've accumulated over these last couple of years and go out there and try to put it on them.
And one more for you, Anthony, is the MMA career, maybe in the back, world champion, done so many things. How vital, how important is this boxing match? Is this kind of the cherry on top for your, your combat sports career? How important is this to get the win? Forget about just fighting one of the greatest of all time. How important is it to you to win this boxing match?
It's huge, bro. I think, most of the MMA guys that came over to boxing, didn't, besides Conor McGregor, weren't fighting top level boxers, and I'm coming over there testing myself against one of the greats. So it's huge to get this win. It's huge for mixed martial arts as a sport, for myself, for my coaches. My coaches have been busting their ass for this camp. And, I'm not going to go out there and let this go. Let's fall through my fingers. I'm going to go out there and I think he'll be surprised on my boxing skill set. I'm not going to go out there and fight like an MMA fighter. I'm going to fight like a boxer.
Man, cannot wait, man. Cannot. All right. My next question is for Roy Jones Jr., one of the greatest boxing talents, if not the greatest boxing talent of all time. Roy, I saw that you were out there for the UFC for the comeback of John Jones and talking about returns. Is this a one-off for you, Roy? Is this, you think, just one time, give the fans what they want, big main event against Anthony Pettis? Or are we going to see you multiple times, maybe, even in 2023? Is this a return for you with multiple fights in the boxing ring?
No, and no. Only for Anthony, I'm doing this. Anthony wanted to, try to change and go cross over into this sport. With him and Masvidal, everybody that's involved, they all made it such a good situation where it's a win-win for everybody. It's a good situation. It's pay-per-view. It's something I wanted to do, which was to have a crossover fight with a good name in MMA. I think I was the first one that came up with that idea. And I didn't get to pay for it, but I came up with the idea. So Floyd and Conor got to get paid for it. So it's like at the end of my career, I still wanted to do it. And because I said I wanted to do it, here's a perfect opportunity. A guy who's also a legend at what he did. Yeah, he was a smaller weight class, but like you say, he was up to 205 pounds when they talked to him about it. So he's big enough to he know how to handle himself. And I know that he's going to go hard with his boxing because he's facing one of the greats. If I was going to go play a one-on-one basketball game against Michael Jordan, I want to get the best basketball coaches around me I can get because I'm playing a GOAT. So I know it's what it is, and I know he's going to be ready for it, but I'm not planning to do it again, no.
Okay. My next question is for the boss, Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. Really early in the promotion stage, even a couple of different promotions. Do you feel way ahead of schedule being a promoter? Only the fourth boxing, Gamebred Boxing 4 here coming up on April 1st to have this super card and have a blockbuster card being on pay-per-view. This is, if not the best boxing card of the year. Do you feel ahead of schedule on the promotion side?
yeah, ahead of schedule would be like if I had like a floor and a ceiling, if I was comparing it to something. When me and Dean, which we talk numerous hours every day, and we just want to put on like the best cards possible. And this card to me feels like the best card possible. So definitely like ahead of schedule if you're just talking about 4 events. But the way I see it is like after a long week's work, you know, whether I'm a bus boy, construction worker, whatever it is, am I going to shell out that 65, 95 or whatever the price is? I got to look at the card and I go, yeah, I'll pay for this. So definitely not that I feel ahead of schedule, but I feel like I'm doing the right moves, you know, and the next card is going to be the same thing. I'm going to sit there with Dean and be like, would I pay my 65, 95 for this after a long week's work, my hard-earned money? And that's what I feel. So I'll never like look at it from ahead of schedule and like that. I'll just look at it, would I pay for it myself? Because I'm a huge fight fan, man. And I wouldn't miss if it was so-and-so throwing this card on, I wouldn't miss it. I'd pay for it. I'd show up live, you know, because this is just a story. This is history for any combat sport enthusiast. So I definitely feel like me and Dean will get like a fat cigar and like celebrate after. And it's gonna be a fucking hell of an event, man.
Absolutely, my man. Last one for Jorge, and I got 2 real quick ones for Dean. Last one for Jorge is everyone sees all the good. Everyone sees all these fight posters. Everyone sees, of course, Roy and Anthony there. What has been maybe the hardest, the most difficult part of this, making Gamebred Boxing 4 into, complete it? What's been the hardest part?
Man, there's some hard parts because my whole fighting career, I've never had gray hairs. I woke up one day, I had like 8 of them. So there's definitely some level of stress involved. I'm on the phone more than I've ever been, you know, and them phones are like microwaves, right? So they're like microwaving my brain because I'm on that phone like 4 hours a day, at least minimum, just doing the promotion stuff, you know, whether it's talking to sponsors, venues, you know, making sure everything's okay with the flights, hotels, things like that, you know. So definitely the promote game is different than the fight game. I've been in the fight game professionally now 20 years, and it's different on the body and on the mental, man. I would say the promoting game on the mental is like very draining, man. It could be very, 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 very rough. You know, we got to have everything planned out. Anybody could, you know, God forbid anybody get hurt. You got to replace these individuals and you got to have backup for them. It's not an easy game, man. For sure. Hey, best of skill to you on April 8th, my man. My 2 for Dean Toole. First of all, Mr. Willock said you have been a part of so many different events and promotions in the combat sports. Maybe an easy question for you. Has this been the biggest? Is this the biggest event you have ever been a part of on promotion and matchmaking?
I'd say, yeah, definitely. But kind of like what Masvidal said earlier, you can't really put a ceiling on things. So like we're already discussing trying to make the next card bigger and the next card bigger and the next card bigger. So that's kind of our focus is how do we make the next one better than the next one, you know? So we're super excited about this one. I mean, I'm friends with Anthony and Roy, so it's kind of a weird position watching both of these guys fight. But, the whole card is great. Everything about it is great. Another thing we didn't really touch on is some of the guys on the card are the real boxing prospects we have, the young up-and-comers. You know, a lot of people look at this card and just see like, you know, some guy maybe at the latter end of his career or was in the UFC or whatever. But we have a guy like Luis Feliciano, 16-0, headlining DAZN cards from Puerto Rico. He's fighting Clarence Boot, 21-7. We have a kid from Pensacola also, 12-0 Devin Cushing, who is a world level amateur. Like, so these type of fights are going to put eyeballs on these upcoming boxers that eventually are going to headline these cards. You know, this kid, Luis Feliciano, is from Milwaukee. So like his dream in his whole life is to headline at Fiserv Forum. So this is the first time he actually gets to fight in this arena. So a lot of people's dreams are coming through just from this event that aren't being talked about, you know. And then we have a fight like Pro Gonzalez versus Gina Mazzani. We have Dylan Kleckler versus Josh Burns, which was a main event for BKFC that ended up falling out. And that's like the first fight on this main card. So it's like, look at the level of talent on this card. And we're not just doing like spectacle fights, people might say, because all of the fights are fucking great. But we do have real upcoming talent on these cards also. And we're going to showcase that on April 1st. That's funny. That's why I wanted to jump into, Dean. All these superstars with Pearl Gonzalez and Anthony Pettis and Roy Jones. It's Jose Aldo's on this card. One of the, greats in the history of MMA.
Gamebred Boxing main event 1, 2, and 3 was Devin Cushion. I've had the honor to commentate his fights. He is insane. He's terrific. He's got one of the greatest jobs in boxing. How important is it to have him on this card and have all these eyes on Devin Cushion, who is a Pensacola product?
Like I said, it's super important. It's super important for Gamebred Boxing, and it's important for Devin Cushion. You know, this is the time where he needs to go out, show what he's capable of doing inside of the ring with millions of people watching. And the same thing with Feliciano, the same thing for a guy like Clarence Booth, who this is his time to take that spotlight from Luis Feliciano. So even Damian Marciano is an 18-9 vet that Devin Cushing's fighting. Like, you're fighting somebody in there that has 18 wins as a professional. So like these are both of those guys' time to show up and show out. You know, let me get some of that spotlight and let me put it on me, and let me get into those spots moving forward. So that's what we're trying to do. We're just trying to put eyeballs on this event, our upcoming talent, and keep continuing to put on great cards with great names and providing opportunity for everybody. It doesn't matter what part of their career they're in. That's all we're trying to do, is provide opportunity, pay people what we think is fair, and keep everybody happy.
All right, great. Thanks, Dean. Thanks for those questions, David. Next up, we're going to have Dave Kalman for the Milwaukee Sentinel-Journal. Dave, please unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
Hey, thanks. I don't know if I can keep up that energy that you guys have, man. This is going to wear me out, but a couple, if you don't mind. Roy, you mentioned what's in this for Anthony, you know, the chance to make his move into boxing against, you know, somebody with a ton of experience and a ton of success. But what's in it for you? I mean, it seems like if you win, people say, well, you're supposed to, and if you don't, you know, so what's the gain here for you?
You know, it's no real gain. My gain is to give everybody an opportunity to get together, put on an awesome card for the people to see, because that's my whole goal in boxing, is always entertain people and give people what they want to see. And I know what Dean and Jorge are trying to do, and they're trying to, you know, give people a new way of bringing fights together, fights that people want to see. Because in boxing now, that's one of the biggest problems we have, is that we're not giving people fights they want to see. Although Tank and Garcia doing it right now, Loma and what's the kid name?
Devin Haney.
Devin Haney, yeah. And Loma and Devin Haney also about to do it. So they starting to come out and give people the fights they want to see. But it's like, for the most part, people don't get to see the fights they want to see because people won't fight. Well, it's like, you make a situation good and you're a fighter, it's like, what would I rather be doing? Would I rather be out of shape 230 pounds, or would I rather be get in shape and come down to 200 pounds and give the fans something to look at? And give everybody an opportunity, and give him an opportunity to either gain experience in a win or gain experience in a loss. Either way it goes, he's going to gain some hell of experience, because I can promise you he ain't going to see many people in that ring again with the IQ that I have. So, I mean, I had the youth I used to have with it, but I still have an IQ.
You mentioned the OG thing, and I'm an older OG than you by a ways. I think we all know that, you know, we aren't what we were physically, you know, 20 years ago, or at Anthony's age. How do you feel physically, both, you know, overall and as a boxer, and what's your training been like for this?
Training's been pretty good. You know, it's just that in boxing, as you get older, as you know, you can't abuse your body like you used to when you were younger. So you have to take care of your body a little bit differently. You have to take a few more days off. But the real thing is that, man, this is the other reason why I'm on the card is because one thing you got to know about Roy, he Gamebred.
And maybe this is good for both of you. The sports, I mean, there's more and more, seems like there's more and more crossover, and that's obviously the idea here. What can boxing learn from MMA, and what can MMA learn from boxing?
In my opinion, what boxing can learn from MMA is that MMA gets a lot better rep, because the real fighters fight the real fighters. When guys are at the peaks, they meet. And it's like, yeah, of course, I'm past my peak, but I'm still a legend. He's probably past his MMA peak, but he's still a legend. So when two legends get together and make it happen, yeah, I have the bigger IQ, but he has the age. So it makes it almost an even situation for us both. Now, me, yeah, if I win, people going to say, well, you should have won. But if he can pull off an upset, now it's like, whoa, you know what I mean? So it's like the whoa factor still is there. And yeah, it's all on me, I understand, but the whoa factor still is there. And what you want to give people is they got to have an opportunity to be able to say, whoa, we didn't expect that. That's what you give people, and that's what we're giving people now.
Anthony, what are your thoughts on what each can learn from each other?
And I think it's happening, man. If you look at the fights that are happening, like Roy just said, Tank Garcia, that sold out in like 5 minutes. So the fights that are supposed to happen in boxing are starting to happen now. And I think the right people are taking note. The promoters that are in charge of this stuff are making these fights happen. Dana White, one of the best promoters in MMA, he makes these fights happen. You look at my UFC record, I fought the best of the best in my era. 170, 145, 155, didn't matter. That's exactly what I'm bringing into this boxing. My coach is like, hey, you sure you want to fight Roy Jones at 200 pounds for your first boxing fight? Hell yeah, for sure I want to do that. That's the challenges I want.
Roy, this is way off topic, and I apologize if you don't want to go here, but I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask. My last question: has your dual citizenship caused you any difficulties in the last year, either in sport or life in general?
No, it has not. I mean, in life in general, yeah, you got to change certain things. You can't go to a place when they're having war. I mean, you won't want to do that no way, but it really hasn't caused me no problem because you got to realize that I'm a sportsman. I'm not a politician. I'm not into the politics. I don't really care what goes on politically. That doesn't bother me. So it's like I have friends in both countries. I have friends on both sides. So I don't want to see nobody at war ever because like I said, we as sportsmen and as athletes, we learn that we have to respect everybody. And sometimes you go look at a football team or a basketball team, even boxing and MMA teams, there are guys from all over different places, but we share a common respect for one another because we know what one another goes through. And I feel like even politicians, shouldn't be allowed to be politicians unless they've been athletes first. Because when you're an athlete, you learn how to respect everybody. Race, religion, don't matter. So I feel like the athletes are better suited to be politicians than the real politicians. Because the real politicians never have to go through that.
All right. Thank you, Roy. Thank you for those questions, Dave. Next up, our questions are going to come from James Bell with the Boxing Source. James, please unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
All right. Thanks, Andrew. First off, this question is for Dean Toole. Given that this is the 4th edition of this boxing event here, and this one is going to be in Milwaukee, which, kind of isn't familiar with having like events, like boxing events of this magnitude. Like, how is it to kind of go into a market like Milwaukee and have, at least one fighter from Milwaukee be part of this card?
No, it's super exciting. And we were looking at places all over the country. We were looking at Arizona at one point, Texas, Florida, all sorts of different places. Pettis is from Milwaukee. He hadn't fought there since 2016 or 2000, something crazy. It was a long time ago, I think. And then we just kind of look at cities that have a big population, but maybe don't have enough going on. Miami's a tough town because there's so many things you're competing with every weekend. Vegas, you're competing with something every single night. Justin Bieber could be one night here, the same night it could be Tim McGraw selling out the Raiders Stadium or something. Like, it's wild. So Milwaukee is an hour and 15 minutes from Chicago. It is home to one of the second best basketball teams in the world. I think the evaluation of the Bucks has went up $1 billion since Giannis has been a part of that team. The venue is absolutely beautiful, absolutely incredible. One of the nicest NBA arenas there is. So there's a lot of factors we had with that. Pearl Gonzalez, also from Chicago, close to the area, has a great following. Luis Feliciano was great to get him on this card because he's a local. But we've done how many fights? Probably 4 fights Roy and I have co-promoted that he's fought on in Pensacola. So I think this is cool. We're doing this in a different city, a big city and a beautiful venue. Now we're in Anthony Pettis' hometown, and there are some locals on the card and some huge star power. So that's kind of how we came up with that. And then we have kind of like a deal with the ASM, the arenas all over the country. So that place was open. It all made sense. And that's why we picked Milwaukee.
Gotcha. And my next question here is for Anthony Pettis. I know that you were talking about, getting in the ring with Roy Jones, and you named all his accolades and being one of the greatest of all time, and also being a 2022 International Boxing Hall of Famer. What are you kind of like doing right now to prepare yourself to clear your mind so that once you step in the ring, it won't matter about all of those accolades. You'll just get in there and fight?
I'm sparring every day, bro. I'm sparring, five rounds a day, 10 rounds on Friday, 12 rounds on Saturday. The more sparring I can get, I'm gonna be in there. So basically my coaches has me sparring, and good sparring partners. We're not sparring just, guys that come in the gym. We're finding the best sparring partners I can have. And my confidence is coming from my sparring.
Gotcha. And my last question here is for Roy Jones. Dean Toole was saying you've been, working with him a few times as far as like having fights over in Pensacola, as we say in Florida. So how's it, like you said, to like come up to Milwaukee and just give the fans a showing of a Hall of Famer there in Milwaukee?
Well, I mean, I love the fact that I get to go a place that I haven't been. And I knew that when they said Milwaukee, I know they got a great freak there. So for me, myself and Pettis, we both kind of freaks in the ring. So it's like, why would we not go there and make it happen? And it's where Pettis is from too. So it's like, for me, it just was a great opportunity for everybody involved. And like I said, yeah, a lot of the risks is on me, but it is what it is. So it's like, as a fighter, you don't duck and dodge nothing. You know what I mean? It's just, yeah, I got to deal with the fact that I'm older, of course, and I've dealt with a lot of things in my life, and I have to deal with this too. But when you get the opportunity, you got to shoot, and that's what we do.
All right. Thank you, Roy. Thanks for those questions, James. Our last media questions for today are going to come from Damon Martin with MMA Fighting. Please unmute yourself and you can ask your questions.
Thanks so much. A couple questions for Jorge. Jorge, obviously this card has taken place 1 week before your own fight in the UFC. Of course, you work with Dean Toole for a reason, as a great partner, but how has it been balancing your time, as a promoter, doing all the things you're doing on that side, and also preparing for your own fight, literally 1 week after this card?
So it's fighting at the end of the day, and it's combat. So is especially the initial part of the card where we're matching up guys and stuff, and I'm just talking fighting, and I'm looking over videotapes of who we're gonna match up with who. I think that just keeps my mind in combat, so it helps out. Now the things that don't help is like if I got to talk to like sponsors, advertisers, the arena, things like that. Maybe not the thing that I'm looking forward to the most, but it's still combat oriented. So I feel like my mind's in it, and just being in that arena. I've done it before where before I broke the record on Ben Askren's face, I actually competed against Pettis 2 weeks before that. We had a grappling competition, and it was in Pensacola. The arena was packed, and it was just amazing. The reason why I did that, not just to get the goal against Pettis, was a phenomenal grappler, but to have that, like, I wanted to shake the jitters then, like get in front of all these people, cheering, booing, whatever it was, and just like, all right, get it out the way, because in 2 weeks, I'm going full speed, and it's with the blows and everything, and you just kind of get the jitters out, I kind of feel the same thing when I'll be at the arena on Saturday, watching these greats go at it. I'll kind of get the jitters out myself then, I'll get in front of this huge, massive crowd. I'll be there. I won't be competing, but I'll be watching the fights, and I'll have all that euphoria of the screaming, the shouting, all that stuff that goes on with it. So it's amazing. And in many ways, I get to promote the event, and I get to promote myself. So it's like, it's a double-bladed sword. Every time I do a UFC interview, I'm bringing up Roy Jones Jr. versus Anthony Pettis just 1 week before, So I think it's a perfect marriage for me, man.
And Jorge, a lot of people in mixed martial arts that have covered the sport like myself have, considered you one of the best boxers we've ever seen in MMA. Obviously, you're wearing your hat as a promoter when you're promoting your own boxing card, but is there still a dream down the road of you actually stepping in there and doing this, in your future? Because there's a lot of opportunity. I know for a long time, there was the Jake Paul conversation, but Nate Diaz is out there, and obviously boxing legends. We're seeing, Roy Jones against Anthony Pettis. Is this like still a bucket list item for you to do this?
100%. My first love in this world was boxing. I discovered it when I was like 6-7 years old. I saw it on TV, was immediately hypnotized. Basketball, football, no other sport never could capture my attention. Actually, nothing for the most part, but besides kung fu movies, and boxing would capture my attention, and it was just, I don't know, it was just like instinctive where it was on and I was just watching, and then MMA came later, and this is what I want to do. At around 11 years old is when I discovered MMA, but boxing was like my first thing, and it's always been on my list. A lot of people don't know I have one pro boxing fight many moons ago. So I would definitely love to do it, and do it the right way, just build myself up fight after fight after fight, in boxing. The UFC one day will allow me. But if it's in fantasy world, man, I'd be boxing this year, brother.
And a couple questions for Anthony. Anthony, I know that you've accomplished so much in your MMA career. And I know you said this was such a unique opportunity. You were already kind of figuring out what was going to be next for you in MMA. I know you weren't going to do the PFL season. If everything goes well on April 1st and you pick up a win over a legend like Roy Jones Jr., is there a possibility that you just turn your full focus to boxing and maybe don't do MMA again? I mean, is there a possibility that could happen?
Man, that's something I gotta talk to myself about. You know, MMA is like, I've done so much in mixed martial arts. You know, I've got a team of guys that I'm building up. But you know, boxing for sure for me, like I grew up watching, you know, Oscar De La Hoya Trinidad. My dad was Puerto Rican, my mom's Mexican. You know, that fight right there is what the reason why I got into combat sports. You know, when that happened, all the attention they got, you know, just everything around it was like, you know, boxing is what I wanted to do. But for some reason, my mom didn't want me to box. She wanted me to do taekwondo and kickboxing. And kickboxing is, you know, just as dangerous. So, you know, I ended up following that career path, you know, and it took me to where I am now. But now that this opportunity is, you know, boxing's in front of me, I'm hiring the right guys. You know, I'm spending the money on the right team, the right sparring partners, you know, the right everything that I need to do to take this, you know, 100%, you know, serious. So I guess I don't want to look past this fight. You know, I'm fighting a GOAT in his arena. You know, I'm going in his arena. I'm going into the ring. So I can't go past that. You know, I'm gonna focus on April 1st and, you know, see what comes after that.
I know you said, you know, during your own career, Anthony, and, you know, speaking since you left the UFC, and it's nothing against the UFC, but people being able to look at other opportunities, not getting so, you know, hyper focused on one thing. Is this a great example of where we're at in combat sports now, where a guy like yourself, a legend of mixed martial arts, can cross over and have a fight against Roy Jones Jr., because you couldn't have done this if you were still in the UFC. But opportunities like this, bare knuckle, you know, obviously PFL, things like this, like, is this exactly what you've always been talking about in terms of branching out and taking these opportunities? Because I have to imagine this is a dream come true. Plus, you know, you're probably getting paid well for it as well.
Yeah, you know, I think when I did that interview, I was talking more. They asked the question about guys that I managed, you know, and I was saying like the younger guys, you know, they were, you know, waiting, passing up good deals to get on that contender series, to get on, you know, the tough show. So that's what I was more referring to. But yeah, like, you know, guys that are, you know, that paid their dues in the sport. Roy Jones, you know, paid his dues in the sport. Like we deserve these opportunities, and shout out to Masvidal for giving us these opportunities, man. And the fans, you know, the mixed martial arts fans and the boxing fans kind of go hand in hand. You know, I see all the fights here in Vegas. I go to all the boxing fights. I go to the MMA fights. They cross over a lot, and giving these guys, you know, something they want to see like this is I think is the future. It's entertainment. You know, look at Mayweather and Pacquiao doing a tag team boxing match. There's a lot of stuff that's going on for entertainment, and I think you know, Masvidal is a smart man for putting this together.
And one question for Dean Toole. Dean, I know obviously you talked about the pay-per-view where it's going to be available. I don't know if I've seen it. Has the price been set for this card yet? I don't know if I saw that.
Yeah, it's $49.99.
Okay, and that's going to be, so it's going to be traditional pay-per-view, UFC Fight Pass, so it's going to be available digitally and through traditional pay-per-view.
Yeah, so it's through any cable company. It's going to be through in-demand, and then it's for linear, and then digital pay-per-view. In-demand also has ppv.com now, so it's available anywhere in the world. If you have iOS or Google Play, you can download ppv.com app or go on their website and watch. You can watch this anywhere, any country in the world. And also UFC Fight Pass is available in almost every single country. So it's also another option for digital pay-per-view. And again, it's the second time they've ever did that, especially with a third-party promoter in the history of them doing anything. So the only other time was Mayweather McGregor. So we're super thankful that they allowed us to do that and allowed a couple of their guys that are still under contract to compete on this card. Jose Aldo's still under contract with the UFC. So they gave their blessing that he was allowed to do that. So we're super grateful for that.
All right. Thanks, Dean. And thanks very much for all those questions, Damon. That's going to wrap it up for our media questions today. I know a number of other media had questions. I'm sorry we weren't able to get to everyone. We're under some time constraints today, but we'll do our best to get to everyone next time. With that, I'll turn it back over to Sean Wheelock to lock it up with Anthony and Roy.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And again, thanks to all of you media. So on Fight Week, we will have a major press conference. All of the fighters, including our two main event fighters, will be in person. I do want to thank again all of you for attending. I want to thank our participants today, our two outstanding promoters, the legend that is Jorge Masvidal and the legend in the making, truly so innovative, as Dean Toole. And of course, our two legendary main event fighters, two of the greatest of all time in their respective sports, Roy Jones Jr. and Anthony Pettis. You can see this show on pay-per-view. It is Saturday night, April 1st from Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. As Dean just talked about with Damon Martin, through our traditional linear pay-per-view. So that's through cable, that's through satellite, that is in-demand pay-per-view. And then two options for you on the digital pay-per-view to order online. In-demand's digital pay-per-view arm, which is ppv.com. And of course, through UFC Fight Pass pay-per-view as well. Tickets, go to fiservforum.com. That's fiservforum.com. So again, thanks to our participants for Jorge Masvidal, Dean Toole, Roy Jones Jr., Anthony Pettis. Thanks to everyone, including Andrew Roberts at Swanson. I'm Sean Wheelock. We'll see you Fight Week. And remember, it's Saturday, April 1st in Milwaukee. Thanks for watching.